It's the most wonderful time of the year! Merry But the weather outside is frightful, and I have an excuse to be inside now, so I'm not weird about it. Anyway, it's cold, so let's talk about Ice-type moves. What are they? How do they do? And well, let's start with the generic coverage that will explain most. Oh yeah, and speaking of... This video is sponsored by Displate. Any purchase made after clicking the link below directly supports this channel, and oh my word, it's been amazing. Absolutely a sincere thank you to everyone who has gotten themselves an awesome metal poster for the support. And of course, thanks to Displate for making it possible. You know how YouTubers are always worried about January revenue? Well, thanks to you and to Displate, we actually don't have to worry about this January anymore. February and March are iffy, but the worst of it's covered. And I cannot thank you or Displate enough for that. This channel not only supports me, but several others on the team too. So January through March is a very monetarily stressful time. So again, thanks so much. Check them out with the link below, and we even have some of our own posters on there. And yeah, now back to the main video. Ice has always been an insurmountable element for man. Fire was mastered so long ago, but the power of ice's cold has escaped us. Until we did it eventually. Freezers are cool. But just like fire, ice, or rather the cold, is quite dangerous. Cold weather still claims lives every year, and it's even worse when it comes to hypothermia. I mean, if you fall into water that's just 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, you could fall unconscious in 15 minutes or less, depending on your fitness. Heck, even if you're in water that's 40 degrees, you can still die in under 30 minutes. So the cold is no joke, which is why it's an entire attack type in Pokemon. But how do ice types work? How would their powers function? Well, we just did a video about that right here, so see that for more details, but I'll summarize it real quick. Ice types create cold by either compression or by pressurizing naturally found elements into highly condensed liquid gases, such as CO2, oxygen, or even nitrogen. The gases evaporate quickly, creating the cooling effect that can reach temperatures well below 0 degrees Celsius and Fahrenheit. And sometimes, with some Pokemon, it is just straight up ice magic. So let's start by talking about physical ice moves. First up, we have a simple ice punch, where the user uses its fist covered in ice to punch the target, which may cause the frozen debuff. Oh, you know what? Now is a good time to chat about the best part of Ice-type moves, the ability to cause the frozen debuff. Also known as freezing, or just ice in Japanese, when frozen, the affected Pokemon is unable to move. Being frozen is incredibly dangerous in a Pokemon battle, and with the debuff being able to last an incredibly long amount of time, it can really start to hinder your team. Every turn, you have a 20% chance to thaw out, and with the way statistics work, you know that someone, somewhere, has been frozen for 20 plus turns in a row. But you could always just use a fire-type move. Those thaw them out. There are other things that prevent being frozen though, such as harsh sunlight, but overall, causing your opponent to freeze is amazing. It's just better paralysis, really. So, now that we've got that covered, let's go into the next move, Ice Ball. It's a ball of ice, launched or rolled right at you. Ice is as hard as some stones, though it is much easier to shatter. This attack lasts 5 turns, or until it misses, and every turn the ice ball gets bigger and more powerful. It's like Rollout, but covered in ice. It's based on the idea of a ball of snow rolling down a snowy mountain, getting bigger and bigger exponentially as it collects more snow. Also, if the Pokemon used Defense Curl the turn before, then they are already in position for this move, so the attack's damage is doubled. Also, fun math stuff, if you use Defense Curl and Ice Ball hits every time, the last attack could have 960 power. That's nutty. Like, chill out please. Jeez. Icicle Spear is where the Pokemon fires out its icicle-like spears that hit 2 to 5 times. Icicles form when snow on a high place like a tree or rooftop melts and the water drips down slowly, but then refreezes once the sun is no longer heating it up. The Pokemon that learned this move, like the Vanillish line, are perfect for icicles. I mean, Vanillish is literally a sentient icicle. It just decorates itself to look like ice cream. It's got snow on top that melts and drips down onto its super cold body. Icicles at times can be the perfect spear. If the conditions are right, they can get quite sharp, and plenty of folks have died from them. But most of the time when they hit anything, they just shatter. Icicle Crash is completely similar to Icicle Spear, except it's completely different. Instead of small missiles of ice, this is a large icicle that could easily knock you out with its weight alone, but it's also sharp. Now, when you're talking about ice and snow, you can't not have an Avalanche move. That's like if you had Rock type without Rock Throw or something like that. It's like a requirement. However, being Game Freak, they didn't think of that. It took them 4 gens to realize that they needed it. So, yeah. Avalanches are caused by tiny bits of snow shifting or moving and gravity slowly pulling the snow downwards off of a mountain. Eventually, that small event slowly builds until all of the snow on the mountain is moving. Its huge weight pulling even trees along down its path. Some ways to start an avalanche, other than kicking the snow around, is the sun melting bits and pieces of the snow here and there. And even just the vibrations of your voice could cause an avalanche if things happened to be set up just right for that. But back to Pokemon, this move uses the intense power of the falling snow to damage the target, and depending on if the opponent has attacked the user this turn or not, can make this move deal double damage. The thought process behind this is possibly that if a Mon just causes its own avalanche, well, that's that. It's your standard avalanche. But if it has had help from the impact of the other attack, well, now the snow comes here much quicker. Ice Fang is a move wherein the user covers their fangs with frigid cold and bites the target. How do they do this? Again, details in the last video, but they either could breathe their ice breath on their fangs, or their fangs are hollow and filled with really cold substances. Then they just kind of bite with them. Simple facts. Ice Shard is a very simple attack, and it's called Ice Throwing Stones in Japanese. The user flash freezes chunks of ice and hurls them at the target. Quite simple, hence why it's so quick. It's a move that always goes first. And now we reach our first signature move of the video, Freeze Shock, the signature move of Black Kyurem. Not white, not normal, only Black Kyurem. Makes sense though, since it's Ice Electric type. On the first turn of this move, Black Kyurem charges its attack in the generator tail, and on the second turn it launches electrically charged ice. Which is rather interesting when you think about it. I mean, ice is made of water, and water conducts electricity, but ice is not that great of a conductor. Funny, isn't it? And that's because the ions are unable to bounce around and tunnel easily. Ice is too hard for the electricity to move around in, similar to wood. However, I'm pretty sure the legendary Pokemon Black Kyurem is strong enough to ignore the limitations of ice. It is a dragon of ice and an electrical generator merged into one, after all. But still, this move could be better. Maybe if they made the ice look less like hard ice and more like melty ice. Like a breath attack that's using both Pokemon powers at once. Or, I don't know, make it look more like how the anime portrayed it. More electrical, less ice, even though it's ice type. Our next signature move on the list is Ice Hammer, the move of the second worst Pokemon ever. Why does Crabominable get its own move? This move has Crabominable swing its strong, heavy, stupid fist feet claws. Pretty simple. It's ice type because Crabominable stores cold in its claw feet fists, which are stupid. And that was it for the physical moves. Let's move on to the special moves. And they are only a bit harder to explain. I mean, breathing ice? That's fantasy. Or is it? I'm not gonna stop promoting this video over here. Click it. I explain how it works. Let's start with Aurora Beam. The target is hit with a rainbow-colored beam. At first glance, you'd think, oh wow, it's a fairy-type move. I mean, rainbows, that's just magical. I mean, Xerneas learns it, but that may be for less of the ice reason and more for the rainbow reason. However, this move is not fairy-type. It's ice. And well, it really doesn't have anything to do with ice. The move is based off of the Aurora Borealis, or possibly any other Aurora. The Borealis is just the most well-known one. These only happen in certain locations because of how the magnetosphere interacts with solar winds. Where the magnetosphere is weakest or the solar winds are strongest, particles in the sky get messed with, which allows us to see the interaction. As you can tell by that description, ice really has no effect in this scenario. I mean, sure, it just happens to be cold at the poles, which is where this normally happens, but that's because it's the furthest from the sun always. Less light, you know? So, as an ice-type move, I could really argue against it. It could easily be fire or fairy-type. Imagine how cool a move like Solar Winds would be, yeah? But to explain its ice-type, I guess, it's ice-mancy. It's magic. Yeah, this move would be better off not ice-type. Now, besides avalanches, the next most iconic thing would be a blizzard. With this move, a howling blizzard is summoned to strike the opposing Pokemon, possibly leaving them frozen. This is one of the more powerful moves that's actually able to inflict a status condition that matters. However, its trade-off is rather interesting. Its accuracy is only 70%. How a huge storm that fills the entire battleground misses, almost a third of the time even, is a mystery to me. Maybe it is just meant to be a focused stream of blizzard then. Maybe it has to do with a Pokemon's ability to withstand the cold for 8 seconds. It is just a blizzard after all. Wait, is it? Blizzards are classified as winter storms that have sustained winds or frequent gusts that are greater than 56 kilometers an hour, with blowing or drifting snow which reduces visibility to 400 meters or less and must last for a prolonged period of time, typically 3 hours or more. So I guess this move isn't really a blizzard. Either that or these fights are way longer than I thought, almost as long as Gen 4 battle animations. But anyway, I guess it's a blizzard in name alone. It just rushes a huge gust of snow your way. Ice Beam strikes with an icy cold beam of energy. This may also leave the target frozen. This move, along with Frost Breath and Powder Snow, all use the same basic mechanics, with a few twists, but they all work the same way. The creature may build up a large amount of liquid CO2 or nitrogen, your choice, and then they expel this cold substance in a few ways. For Ice Beam, it's a cold beam of energy, so basically magic, while Frost Breath is more akin to a dragon's fire, but super cold, so an ice dragon, and Powder Snow is the Frost Breath, but with bits of powdered snow mixed in. It's just cold air, just like Icy Wind, also known as Chilly Wind. It's very similar to the previously mentioned Frost Breath, but possibly more wind and less frost. In fact, you wouldn't even need the super cooled gas here. They actually could breathe just air, but not just any air. It's gotta be compressed air. That's right, even just slightly compressing air will make it feel colder. Do it enough, and you've got some icy wind. And then we have sheer cold, and oh man, the target faints instantly, just straight up. It works based on the idea of, well, sheer cold. It's so cold that you freeze solid instantly. In Japanese, this move is named Absolute Zero, which is a temperature. The temperature, to be exact. At Absolute Zero, or 0 Kelvin, there is no movement. Nothing would be able to survive this temperature. It's basically as if every molecule, every fiber of your being stopped. And unfortunately, once your body stops, it's really hard to get moving again. Next, we have Kyurem's signature move, Glaciate, which means to cover with ice or glaciers. Kyurem attacks by blowing freezing cold air at the opposing Pokemon. This lowers their speed stat. In Japanese, this name is called Frozen World, and that makes sense. I mean, if you were to freeze the ground or create a glacier-type landscape to fight on, well, you've made a frozen world. And I'm sure your opponent might not be so inclined to fight on slippy ice, so it's slowed down. However, again, the fast decline in temperature would still be damaging, as it's a sudden drop in temperature. Creatures love homeostasis. Big changes always affect creatures in negative ways. Ice Burn is the signature move of White Kyurem, which is a tad odd. This Kyurem is fire instead of electric, which helps in explaining why the move causes burns, but still, it charges one turn and launches an ultra-cold freezing wind that surrounds the target. So how come adding fire to the ice makes it colder? Well, because rather than launching the fire along with the ice, it's using the fire powers to draw even more heat out of its ice storage tail thing. Have you ever felt behind your freezer? It's warm, because, to put it extremely simply, freezers aren't adding cold to the inside, they are removing the warm from the inside, and they gotta put that somewhere. So in the case of this Pokemon, it's expelling the heat from inside of its cold storage thing so fast that it causes some flames to appear, and then it launches the super cooled burst. The reason it can cause burns is, I'm sure, just for a mechanical reason, but I guess also frostbite. Frostbite is when just a part of your body freezes solid. It deals similar damage to a burn, but usually it's worse. Again, more details in that video on how the ice types work. Please watch it, give me views. Freeze Dry is simply described as the user rapidly cools the target. This may also leave the target frozen. This move is super effective on water types. Now, freeze drying is a very common technique in preserving food. Where dehydration uses heat to remove the water from something, freeze drying, or cryodesiccation, first freezes the object and then uses sublimation to remove any excess ice or water. If you don't remember chemistry class, sublimation is where you basically skip the liquid phase between solid and gas. So in this case, the solid ice is vaporized normally by lowering the pressure by great deals to where the ice evaporates from its solid state. And this would explain why the move is so much more dangerous to water types. I mean, half of the process of freeze drying is drying. It's in the name. And then, after a really interesting move, we have Freezy Frost, where your partner Eevee attacks with a crystal made of cold frozen haze. And well, I mean, what else there is to talk about? It's a frost that's freezing and like an ice crystal, you know, those hurt. Partner Eevee. And thus we've reached the next category, status moves. Haze is where the Pokemon releases a haze that resets the battlefield of all things that change stats. It's not to be confused with Mist, another move that we're talking about at the same time. With Mist, the battlefield is covered in a mist that prevents all stat changes from then on. But why are Mist and Haze ice type and not water type? That's the real question. Possibly it's due to the fact that they aren't really either. You see, in Japanese they are known as White Mist and Black Mist, but their Black Mist can can translate to more than just black mist. It could actually mean fog of suspicion or secrecy, a haze to reset your stats. But white mist, well, it's just mist, really. But as for why it's ice, well, we could look into the examples of things like hot springs, commonly found in cold, icy parts of Japan. Due to the contrast of the heat and cold, along with all of the moisture, it gets really quite misty and hazy at these places. And with this analogy, well, it also links into what the moves do. Hot springs can relax you, thus lower any stats you've raised, but they can also help heal, thus raising any stats that have been lowered. And since you're all chilling out here, well, your stats can't be changed no more. Maybe that's a stretch, but that's my idea. It's a theory. The move Hail creates a hailstorm. It's as simple as that. The hail pours down for 5 turns and deals about a 16th of the other Pokemon's max HP each turn. Makes sense. Most of the time, hail does hurt a little, but it isn't overwhelming. Most of the time. Sometimes things get crazy and we have hail the size of soccer balls. Why do people live in Texas? That's a lot of damage. But thankfully, that's not what the Pokemon are doing with this move. Aurora Veil reduces damage from physical and special moves for 5 turns. This can only be used in a hailstorm. Interesting. Aurora Beam also has a little thing that mixes with hail. If you use it right after the move Hail during a contest, it gets more points. But now, why would Auroras interact with a hailstorm? Typically during a hailstorm, you can't even see the Auroras, even if they were happening at the same time. I guess the Aurora in Pokemon is a magical icy thing, so being surrounded by hail just increases its power, like how being in a volcano makes fire magic stronger, being in the middle of the ocean or with there being a full moon makes water magic stronger, etc. But for a mythological reason. In Old Norse, these lights were seen as reflections of the shields carried by Valkyries. Perhaps they are blessing this Pokemon, allowing it to sustain more damage, essentially by reducing the damage from all attacks. This could also explain Aurora Beam, I guess. It's the concentrated spirit of the Valkyrie's power, which is why it also has the effect of lowering their attack stat. In a way, this power is providing more defense to the caster by doing so. And again, I'm not saying there are actual Valkyrie spirits in Pokemon, I'm just saying it might have been the inspiration. I don't know. It's theoretical. Now then, Sub-Zero Slammer. The user dramatically drops the temperature using its Z power and freezes the target with full force. The power varies, depending on the original move, of course. And ultimately, this is just a Mega Z version of Sheer Cold. In fact, the Japanese name of Sheer Cold shares the Sub-Zero meaning with this move. Now, I don't know about you, but I've learned that Sub-Zero temperatures are very dangerous. And in addition to freezing your opponent, it then hits them, possibly shattering those frozen cells, causing even more damage. Like, have you seen them video games where someone gets frozen and then they shatter into a bunch of pieces? Yeah, like that. Pidgey fainted. Max Hailstorm is the Dynamax Ice-type move. It's literally just a big hailstorm. Remember when I mentioned that sometimes hail can reach the size of sports balls? Well, this move makes them the size of, a house? A stack of cars? A Wailord? No, wait. 10 Sword and Shield Wailords? Regardless, it's real big. And at this point, it being Ice-type almost doesn't matter. It's just a big heavy thing that's gonna crush you. And lastly, G-Max Resonance is G-Max Lapras's take on Max Hailstorm. It summons the same big hailstorm, but it also causes an Aurora Veil to happen. It's ice magic. And with that, the ice moves are explained, for better or for worse. Which type is next? Take a guess down in the comments. And until next time, never stop using your noggin.